I would assume, Xavier, that at least you have the vision statement of Rotary memorized. I'm not sure if you got the rest of your crew on board on this, but I joined the staff at headquarters back in the fall of 2016. We spent a year doing a substantial amount of research, reaching out to Rotarians across the globe, trying to make sure that what we developed as the new vision statement for the organization would be hopefully something more than just acceptable. It took us a full year, 24 words, 2 words a month. We picked up the pace after we finished the vision statement in 2017 and started to work on the 4 priorities for the organization. But what I want to do for you is talk about our future, both in the context of the new action plan, but also in the context of where we are. And when I say where we are in membership, where we are in the context of COVID, what we see as the vision moving forward, and how we can take advantage of some of the challenges that are very significant for the organization going forward. So many of you have maybe seen these figures in the past. Oftentimes we have leaders at the top level of this organization talk about the need to bring people in. And I got to tell you, in the last 10 years, we have brought in more people than there are in the organization. So we brought in almost 1.4 million members. Today we stand at less than 1.2. In that same 10-year time frame, we've lost more people than have joined. So we don't really have problems bringing people into the organization. Our challenge really is keeping people engaged. Very recent survey focusing on why people are joining the organization. And there is a shift happening. The people that are joining today more and more are focusing on personal growth and global service. Local service is tremendously important, but it's going down in comparison to global service and personal growth. And keep that in mind in the context of engaging the people that are joining today. So I have a couple of things I want to show you before we start talking about what we developed as the vision and the priorities for the organization. So here's a chart that is really, if you think of yourself as an individual that joined Rotary in a certain year, you might be in your 8th year in Rotary, or your 3rd year in Rotary, or maybe you're way over on the right of this chart and you're past the 10th year. What this chart tells us is where we reached the peak in terms of membership. So in the first year, people are joining. So the average during that first year is about 72, 74,000 people that are in the organization in their very first year. The second year is, of course, the peak. There we have almost 110,000 people worldwide that are members of Rotary that are only in their second year. Some were just beyond the first year, but not yet into their 3rd year. And what you see happening is a significant drop. So those people in the second year, by the time we get to the 3rd year, there's only 83,000 of those 110,000 people left. So what this is the average people in their second year over the last 5 years, the average number of people in their 3rd year, etc. What I want to show you is what happens in Western Europe with this same chart. So this is worldwide, what you see here, but let's show you Western Europe. So what's happening in Western Europe is they're doing a far better job of maintaining the members that come into Rotary. I'm going to go back. That's worldwide. That's Western Europe. There are lessons to be learned from our current president, Holger. And when he talks about the importance of bringing people in as lifelong friends, being careful in who we pick, but also caring for the people that come into the organization. So what they're able to do in Western Europe is once someone comes in, highly likely that individual is going to stay in Rotary. When I gave you the figures, the focus of the new people that are joining Rotary and their interest in local service, their interest in global service, these are the kinds of things that we need to focus on moving forward. And this shapes, to a large extent, what we're doing in terms of developing the action plan for Rotary as we move forward. So now we look at the impact of COVID and predicting what the impact might be. What you have here in the blue line is the membership of Rotary since the beginning of the organization in 1905. In the yellow line is the annual giving to the annual fund of the Rotary Foundation. The gray bars you see are world events. And what we're looking at as we do this is we're trying to see what happens when a world event impacts Rotary. What is anticipated? We came up with this as a method to try to predict future results at the start of the pandemic. So in April of last year, one of our key members of our business intelligence team prepared this graph to give us some sense of what is anticipated. What is interesting with this is that membership is not impacted significantly as a world event happens, not initially. But when we get past year 1 or year 2, you can see that membership starts to be impacted. So look at the Great Depression. We actually had in the early years of the Great Depression a growth in membership, but later on it started to decline. Similarly, World War II. And you can look at some of these other major events, world events that have impacted the economies of the world. And you can see that membership generally is not hit as significantly as annual giving at the start of the world event. This is helping us to develop strategy, but as many of us hear when we hear someone talk about investments, they commonly tell us that same old phrase that past performance does not in any way guarantee future success. And literally that's where we are with the pandemic. We can't really tell, but this gives us some hint. And I suppose to some extent, none of this is a surprise. Think of membership as a mandatory payment and giving to the annual fund as discretionary, as optional. And so if there's an economic impact of a world event on me personally, maybe the first thing I do is reduce what I'm doing in terms of donations. But later, as it becomes more difficult, maybe I say, you know what, I just can't afford to continue my membership. So that causes us to maybe adjust what we're going to focus on early on in this world event, and also what we need to think about longer term. We happen to have a PhD member of the research and development team at Rotary headquarters who is extremely good at modeling. So he did some auto-regressive modeling based on membership figures and world events, and was able to predict for us what might happen with membership going forward in the context of the world event. This is the kind of stuff that, you know, I come from a background of practicing law, small law firm, maybe a boutique law firm. We never had this kind of data to predict business opportunities, customer impact going forward. This is the stuff that we have been able to provide to the board members to give them some sense of what we need to do in terms of budgeting moving forward. Recently, as in December, November and December of last calendar year, we started reaching out to find out what the pandemic's impact is in terms of attendance. And what we found, and no surprise, is 60% of the clubs worldwide are meeting online. You can see that of 18 to 16% are either in person or mostly in person with an online combination each. And very few clubs have not met at all. in the last 4 weeks. But realize this survey was done at a time of the year from a calendar perspective where a lot of clubs might not have a meeting, with the holidays approaching, Christmas, etc. So this is one of the questions that we asked in the recent survey to get some sense of where the satisfaction level is for Rotarians. This is reassuring to some extent. It is telling us that mostly, even though the pandemic is going on, most Rotarians worldwide are fairly satisfied with the Rotary experience. We have baseline data from a number of years ago in recent years that gives us some sense of comfort, because these are the same kind of figures that we have seen over the last handful of years. However, we did have about 10% of the people surveyed, and it's a significant number, so this is reliable data. 10% of the Rotarians surveyed told us that there is a reasonable possibility that they will not remain a member of Rotary after this next year. And these are the reasons why they might leave. And they could pick more than one. So this is not a situation where they're saying it's exclusively virtual meetings that are impacting us, but you can tell that one of the most significant reasons why these people might leave Rotary in the next year, it's the fact that they've been experiencing online meetings. And it's not the same experience that they're used to. However, what I want you to pay some attention to is these two in the middle, because both of them are service oriented. And if you put the two together, one is talking about my club is not doing enough. And the other one is people saying, my club doesn't have the impact it should. If you put those two together, that's even more than the 60% relative to online experiences. Now go back, think about that slide I showed you as to the reasons why people joined recently. Think about the people that are leaving the organization and when they are most likely to leave. Those are the people that have joined in the last few years. Those are the people that are joining for service, whether it's local or global. So if your club is really not focusing right now on impactful service, you are increasing the odds that you're going to have a higher percentage of members hitting the road. So I love this quote. It's a challenge right now. It's a difficult time. Xavier is working in a world that we have never experienced before, but think of it as this opportunity. You have a crisis, do not let it go to waste. So how can we take advantage of it? I can't tell you, except I can tell you a little bit about our action plan. And I've already told you why people are joining, why they might leave. So how can you change what you're doing? Look at your focus in a way to really move the needle. Service is critical, impactful service, focusing on those individuals, engaging those that are most likely to leave, which are the people that have joined 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, not the people that joined 10 years ago. So these are the 4 priorities that we developed when we came up with the action plan for Rotary. And you can see them, hopefully you've heard them. I'm sure Xavier has memorized them. I would hope that without a doubt that Stephanie has. She's tolerated me a few times over the years. And Jerry, you have no hair left. You have nothing else to do. You're not spending time combing your hair. You should have these things down pat. What I want you to do before we spend too much time is to focus on this particular slide, because this one really takes our action plan, which is a global corporate plan, but it brings it back to the grassroots level. It tells you what are the things that I could be doing right now in the context of this plan that are really focused on a club level approach, a district level approach. So you can see these key things. I'm happy to share this entire PowerPoint with whoever you want at the district level so you can share it with everyone, but it gives you some of the things that are critical moving forward. The importance of a club talk, focusing on a community needs assessment. And we all know right now, potentially where the needs are. It's COVID, it's responding to COVID. So what does your community really need in that context? That's right now, people that have joined in the last year or two, they're looking to your club and they're saying, what is our club going to do right now? And if you're focused on just Zoom meetings and finding a speaker, you're not going to meet the needs that those members are looking for longer term. Focus your efforts. Our research is telling us that people don't want to be in a club that does a lot of things on a superficial basis. They want a few things done and done really well. They want to make sure that they're celebrating, but also looking forward. And critical as you identify needs, that you don't just feel good about what you're doing, but you're actually delivering something that's impactful, that long-term it's going to result in a significant improvement to meet the needs. So when you look at the second priority, which is expanding our reach, these are the things that your club could be doing. Critical, of course, is storytelling, talking about what you do and do well, identifying goals, but also looking within your community to the people that maybe have never been a part of Rotary, but represent an opportunity to open new doors. Certainly in the context of what's happened in our country in the last year, one of the things we can look at is opening up our organization to enhance diversity. So what I'd like to do right now is stop for a minute and talk about participants, because this is a phrase that we started using that oftentimes causes people to wonder, what is a participant? So I'd like to think about a store that's in my backyard, and that is the Target stores. So headquarters is in Minneapolis. It's the single biggest employer in downtown Minneapolis. So look at their logo. Think about that Target. What is at the center of that Target? In the context of Rotary, at the center of that Target are those people like Xavier, myself, Stephanie, Jerry, Susie, whoever, any one of us on this. We bleed Rotary. We probably are a little crazy, but we're at the core. And ideally in this organization, there are so many more people than those that are at that core. And those people are tremendous Rotarians. And there's a concentric circle outside that core that are the Rotarians that show up every week, that help on projects, could care less if they ever have a district title or beyond. But there are several other concentric circles outside of that core. And each one of those participate in the Rotary experience. What we need to do as an organization is focus on the entire target. The people most likely to join Rotary are within those concentric circles. They could be alumni of our programs. They could be parents of students on the youth exchange. They could be beneficiaries of a scholarship. They are people that have been able to enjoy the experience. Those are the people that we want to engage. We want to enhance their experience. It could be a new member that's joined the organization. This is a critical priority, critical in the context of COVID, because people right now are on the edge of committing more or on the edge of leaving. And it's our job to think of them as part of that greater target, engage them more, try to move them closer to the circle, to the center of that target. And in the context of our fourth priority, which is increase our ability to adapt, some of the things that we can do at a club level, free up some funds to do something new and innovative. Look at what we're doing and step back and say, do we just have too much structure? Can we simplify things? Can we look at developing a continuity plan? Can we put in place an opportunity for all of our members or those interested in brainstorming about new ways to serve, new ways to engage people, and new ways to actually keep Rotary relevant? So I'm going to end with a couple of key things about a task force that has been pulled together. So this is a pretty powerful list of people that are on this task force. You see the president, president-elect, the president nominee of Rotary. You also see the chair-elect, the chair nominee. There are 2 Rotarians that are in that chain of leadership for the board or the trustees, one of which is our vice president, Jarita, but the other is a woman from Seattle, Anne Marie Kimball, and a director nominee from Illinois. And those 2 individuals have subject matter expertise in the context of COVID. So Anne Marie Kimball is a doctor. She has a master's in public health. She has worked for the Gates Foundation, for CDC, for WHO, and she has developed for the Gates Foundation over the last few years their strategy relative to addressing endemic infectious disease issues. And so she's right there in the middle of the very issue that we're talking about, is where she spent the last 30 years of her work. In the context of Pat Merriweather, she's an administrator of multiple adult care facilities and has been living with COVID in a very significant way. She serves on a task force advising President Biden, together with the governor of the state of Illinois. And so we have subject matter expertise, and we have the most powerful people in Rotary serving on this task force. And that task force, unfortunately, is suffering right now because they're dealing with me as the staff liaison to that task force. So we've developed a relationship with UNICEF, and they're going to assist us in enhancing our communications efforts. Major focus is going to be an emphasis on getting people vaccinated, the importance of vaccination, but also a tremendous effort relative to equity in distribution of the vaccine. We have a number of projects that we're identifying. We are working with the international offices of Rotary, the club and district support team, together with our regional leaders, to identify projects across the globe that districts are involved in, looking for the best so we can highlight them. We can let clubs and districts know about good things that are happening and some of the options for them moving forward. We're identifying 5 different buckets in which clubs and districts can move forward in response to COVID. So let me tie this back to what I started with way back at the beginning, when I talked about people joining the organization. And I talked about why they're joining. It was local service and global service that were 2 of the 3 top reasons why people join. And when I talk about people leaving the organization, these are the things that people are joining for that reason. And here are opportunities for clubs to do meaningful, impactful service. And we can help you identify projects that really are superb projects that will engage your current members, your new members, hopefully keep them in the organization, despite the fact that we're in the middle of the pandemic. So this is something that Pat Merriweather put together for the task force. And I think maybe it's the obvious for us, but I think it's a really good slide for you to take a look at. At the left are the ages by decade. under the age of 20, between the ages of 20 and 29. These are people in Illinois that contracted COVID year to date through the end of February. So you can see the massive number of people younger in age that have contracted polio. On the right are the number of people who have passed away due to COVID. And you can see that very few people, as you get older, contract COVID, but the number of people dying is very significant as we age. No surprise necessarily, but it really is impactful when you look at it. And it's really important that we help communicate this. The people on the left of this graph who are younger are living with almost no fear of COVID because they don't have friends that are dying, that are their age. And yet the people that are at risk are the people that are older. And it's really important for Rotary to step into this and communicate the need to exercise safe practices, the need to vaccinate, particularly the elderly, to get them out, and to start to address the risks that are involved here. And this is another slide that's predicting herd immunity, something that came really out of Dr. Fauci, but has been presented to us by the experts on our task force. Most of us know this. In the next 10 months or so, it's expected that we'll reach herd immunity in the US. But for the rest of the world, it's going to be 7 years to get there. Think of that in the context of polio. And we've been working at eradicating polio for the last 30 plus years. There is no other organization in the world that has lived with the difficulty of creating a world that is immune from a disease. We have lived with this kind of a challenge. We are the people, we are the ones, country by country, that have worked on addressing this kind of issue. The COVID experience today, it literally communicates to the world the relevancy of what Rotary has been doing in the context of polio eradication. And it's really important for us as an organization to let people know the difficulty of what the world is facing going forward, and that it's going to take the persistence that Rotary has demonstrated over the last 30 years. So with that, enough of those damn slides. I want to open it up for questions. I'm happy to tell you goofy stories if you want, anything in that direction. Yeah, I mean, I've known your district for a long time, Xavier. It's an amazing group. I hope collectively you're doing well. In the early days of the extreme cold that you experienced, I was chuckling to myself because I live with cold and up here in Minnesota. But I actually know how difficult it must have been for you, and I really felt for everyone. We've gone through 20 below, and I've had a couple of days where my furnace has been out and my home has dropped to 40 degrees. I know how bad that really is, and it isn't pleasant. So I'm glad you've all survived, and I suppose now you're all ready to come up here and go ice fishing with me next winter, now that you're used to this stuff. So
the landscaping did not survive though here.
I bet not. Yeah.
At all.
I think we're well prepared now. I lived in Minot, North Dakota for about 4 years and used to travel over to Minneapolis. So I had some cold weather gear still with me, but I wasn't prepared for the light stuff to go out. But well, I want to first thank you before we get into Q&A for providing in-depth view at where we are as an organization and kind of where we're headed as well. Just to kind of tag along there, of course, we like most of the districts, we were trying to pivot this big ship throughout COVID. And so we said, okay, we know a dip was going to happen, right? Most of us going to be like, well, you know, prioritizing my life, I don't know where Rotary is going to fit. But we think in the spring, we're going to shoot up here towards the last leg of this year. But we didn't expect the chart where you showed most folks leave due to virtual meetings, and we're starting to hear that ring quite a bit. And so, I guess my first question to you is, because folks are tired of Zoom, and although we're looking at a 10-month type of deal before herd immunity, is that correlating to age? Is it mostly older folks saying, hey, I think I'm going to leave because I'm tired of Zoom? Or is that just a collective of folks who are thinking about leaving because of Zoom burnout?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And you would have thought it's age, but it's not age-based. It is slightly so, but not as much as you might expect. And that's actually more frightening, I think. I will tell you, my gut feel in terms of responding to that is to recognize the value of picking up a phone and calling those people that aren't attending, calling those people that are barely engaged, and just reaching out. It's just really important. I've been reaching out to some of the more senior leaders of Rotary, people that have been at the highest levels, but you know, they're elderly and they're just really feeling left alone. And you know, that's what we're about when it gets right down to the heart of it. That's a huge part of this organization, is that connection. I mean, we join for service, we join for networking, but you know what? We hang in there because we've become really close friends with people that are just like us. And you start meeting by Zoom and it goes on for a long period of time, and we start to lose that touch.
Yeah, that's very true. I found a lot of our members, they just, even though you're willing to walk them through how to do it, I think they feel like we're undermining them, or you know, they just don't feel that confidence. And I can imagine how that feels, being 60, 70 years old and having some 30-year-old trying to tell you how to walk through it. I mean, it's got to be a jab to your confidence and whatnot. So we had a few that just would not even let us try to help them. So we did keep in touch with them and make phone calls and that sort of thing, but it is tough. I
will say, don't use the 60-year-old phrase in there. Think in the context of, for those of us in our 60s, we would prefer you to say 80-year-olds and above. It's way too close to hitting home here, you know.
90's better.
How about we just say technically challenged?
Technically.
Tom, I have a question for you as well. So, and not to get political, but I know that there was an agreement made last year where there's something along the lines where America cannot export vaccinations to other countries. And I do not know all the intricacies around that, but we're hearing that in the news right now. What is Rotary doing to help get vaccinations in the countries that really, really need them? Brazil, for example, comes to mind. So turn that over.
Yeah, a really good question, Carrie. And I will tell you, this is a real challenge. So there is a global partnership that's been created called Kovacs. I have no idea what it stands for, but WHO is involved, Gates is involved, Gavi, which is, of course, the organization that focuses on vaccines worldwide. The context of Kovacs is to try to deliver equitably deliver vaccines across the globe. They're estimating a need for $26 billion to fund that. They have something like $4 billion in hand. They have started delivery. Their goal right now is to deliver the necessary vaccines at the rate of 20% of what a country needs to something like 93 countries in the world, not 100%, but 20%. But understand that politics come into play. So China has vaccines in excess and the US has vaccines. Where's the country of the United States going to deliver its excess vaccines? Beyond just making sure that we're vaccinated. Well, politically, we're going to pick countries that we want to support probably. And that's just the reality. China's going to pick countries where they want a stronger foothold, and to a large extent we'll be doing the same thing. And Kovacs, on the other hand, doesn't have the political bend, but there is an inherent conflict built into this. Much of the licensing rights about these vaccines are actually owned by governments today because we financed a lot of the research. And there is a movement to try to force the pharmaceutical companies to free up their rights to allow that their vaccines could be at a minimum produced by pharmaceutical companies that are capable of producing it in developing countries, as an example. We're in the middle of this, to be honest. I mean, we just had a speaker from Kovacs speak to this task force last 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago tomorrow. And we're looking at helping. One of our biggest concerns is 20% of the vaccine will be delivered to a country such as, just pick it. I mean, it could be, Ghana. And that's one of the first ones that received it. The idea is that those 20% of those vaccines need to get it in the arms of the right people. And we're not talking the elite. We're not talking Rotarians in Ghana. We're talking the frontline care providers. Largely Kovacs is focused on delivery, getting the vaccines on the tarmac. So who's focused on making sure that it gets in the right arms? And that's actually something that Rotary could be doing. We have the boots on the ground. We have connections with the government. We could be helping to monitor performance and delivery. As time passes, obviously they're going to move beyond 20%. And if a country like Ghana delivers to the right people, maybe they're one of the first ones to get the next 20%. And that's where we're stepping in and talking to Kovacs and WHO and Gates. Can Rotary step into the role that we've been in the role relative to polio eradication? We're the ones on the ground, first and foremost, that are the best advocates. Advocates for worldwide equitable distribution of a vaccine. So I think that's our role going forward, but it's a big leap. We're basically at the point where, should we put on the plate of Rotarians worldwide a second obligation relative to assisting in the delivery of a vaccine worldwide? And we've been 38 years, in the polio effort, and are we prepared to step into the next wave of this?
Yeah, well, thank you for that great response. But and I guess also part of what surprised me in your presentation is you were talking about that it could be, was it 8 years out before the world reaches herd immunity? And like Gloria and I were talking earlier, like, oh, we're so ready to travel. But I know that I have that hesitation because, okay, I may be vaccinated. We may have herd immunity here, but yeah, I want to go to New Zealand. They have it, but am I going to go to Ghana? Probably not. Am I going to go to Brazil? No. And I think that 8-year world herd immunity, I think that surprised me the most of your entire presentation.
Yeah. But realize you might be on the plane with somebody who's actually from those other countries when you're traveling to New Zealand in a connecting flight. But it's bigger than that, because of the ability of the disease to both jump country borders, but also clearly to mutate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the second fear that I got to tell you, being in the role that I'm in, it's actually a pretty frightening thing. I mean, I would prefer to be back practicing corporate law than hearing, that we're looking at 7 years, that we're not keeping up with the mutation of the virus.
Well, thank you so much, Tom. Are there any other questions for Tom? If not, I know we're over time just a little bit. I do have one other question because it's a big deal, right? We're talking about limiting false information that spreads, because that's a really big hurdle, especially in some minority communities where there's grave concern about vaccinations and of the such. And I know that as Rotarians, we're supposed to be basically spreading the information about how vaccines are actually impactful in spreading the disease and also catching it as well. Does Rotary have a big, I guess, PI stance on sending out communications in that regard to kind of help support the backing of vaccinations in that manner?
Yeah, so no question we have. I mean, one of the 5 buckets that we've talked about in terms of initiatives relative to COVID has been the need for us to actually help communicate the value of vaccines and the equitable distribution. And you know, one of the things we're talking about, you know, you can't have John Germ standing up on stage or in a video telling people to get vaccinated. I mean, you know, certainly, don't get me wrong, he's going to communicate towards a certain segment of the audience of the population worldwide. But we need to start recognizing that if Rotary is going to have an impact, we're going to have individuals that speak to different personas presenting in groups that are, whether it's 25 to 30-year-olds, whether it's different ethnic groups, or you know, really recognize the diversity of our country and the difficulty with certain groups of getting people out to get vaccinated. And can we help fund the right person, you know, in a social media context, being the advocate for vaccinating? And it's not going to be Rotarians necessarily. I mean, it certainly could be, but most likely, you know, we do have the ability, if we really play our connections and our cards right, to call on people that, you know, maybe whether it's a sports personality or a performer, a musician that speaks to a different segment of society. That's the kind of stuff we need to help support to get people vaccinated. And I will tell you, the first person to suggest this was John Germ. I used his name intentionally because John knows, you know, a 25-year-old that's coming from a different experience is not going to listen to an 80-year-old Rotary senior leader. So nor listen to the 65-year-old chief strategy officer either, for that matter. So,
well, I enjoyed it, and I'm sure everybody on the Zoom this evening enjoyed it. I just want to thank you again for taking time out of your day to join District 5840. I know you got a lot of friends here. And so I know they feel great and connected, and I'm happy to see you again and present. Thank you so much for the data, because it shows us where we are. No rumors, no comments here and there. The data shows exactly where we are and where we're going. So I just want to say thank you to all of the Rotarians that are on here this evening. It's familiar faces, right? So I see Bob, I see Leanne, Jerry, Gloria, John, all of these guys, they are dedicated. And I just want to thank you again for allowing us to be here with you. And thank you, Rotarians, for all that you're doing within the district. Tom, thank you again. We do appreciate your time.
Thank
well,
you.
I thank everyone. Yeah, I appreciate our service collectively. So good to see everyone.
Yeah, Xavier, one thing I'd like to throw out. So Donna posted in the chat, and I don't know if most people follow the chat, but Fredericksburg has 1,000 shots, vaccinations in their refrigerator, trying to get people to sign up. So spread the word. And I think that's one of the most important things is, so thank you, Donna. When you hear that there's a surplus, send people that way. I had a friend at a CVS the other day who said they're begging people to come in. I shared that on Facebook. We need to get the people out there. And if you know anybody in the Amarillo area, they're doing a gangbuster job on getting folks inoculated. Send them to Amarillo. And it's a first come, first serve. And
Fredericksburg's more fun
to go.
Fredericksburg's more fun. Come to Fredericksburg.
My mom drove to Fredericksburg from Bernie because Bernie wasn't getting a lot of shots. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely keep up the public image and awareness that's going on around this. A lot of people need the vaccine. A lot of people need to be safe. And I know a lot of folks want to see their family and friends. So let's just continue to do our part. Again, thank you all for joining District Town Hall with Tom Thorfinnson. Thank you again, Tom. And I hope
thank you.
Thanks,
Good to see
Tom.
you. Yep.
Thanks, John.
Have a
Thanks,
good
Dave.
evening.
Betty.
Right.